Welcome to MomDaze, a beautiful collective of mamas and experts sharing wisdom, inspiration, and life hacks to support us on this journey through the hazy days of motherhood. Welcome back to the MomDaze podcast. I'm your host, Holly Lowe, and we are continuing our conversation about all things fertility, the things we knew, the things we didn't know, and of course, as we do every month, we've got our What Your Mama Didn't Tell You episode happening today. So welcome back to my beautiful sister, Dawn. We are going to talk a little bit today about our cycles again. I know, hang in there with us. We've talked about them now for a couple of episodes, but it's important that we get this message driven home. I really feel strongly about understanding our cycles is going to be very, very important. On top of that, I know Dawn has some great ideas and insights on working with your cycles. So that's what we're going to need to focus on a little bit too, because we haven't touched on that. So when it comes to understanding our cycle, we've talked about the logistics of it, our cycle steps, stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, follicular phase, the luteal phase, our ovulation, our menstruation. We've got the system down, but what's happening with the rest of our body? What about, our energy levels, our moods, our, emotions, all of those things, business, working out, there's a connection to all of this. So that's something I want you to talk a little bit about today, because you're way more in tune to that. And I'm still learning how to match some of these rhythms up for myself.
Yeah, I think this is so much fun. On the last summit I did in February, we had a naturopath on and she really dug into this and I loved it. So then I started exploring even more. I'd already been doing a little bit for myself and my oldest daughter. And then for this coming summit that's coming up, same thing. I have somebody else coming on talking about it in a different way. And so I have even more insight. And so I'm excited to share some of this with you guys. So the cool thing about our cycle and working with it is our cycle naturally helps us understand that it's normal for us to feel tired at certain times. It's normal for us to feel extra hungry at certain times. It's normal for us to feel like really ramped up and, on things and really focused. It's normal for us to feel, really creative at certain times. And so it's kind of cool if you actually use that knowledge as you're scheduling out your month. You have a much more fluid month. It feels a lot more like you're working with it. So like, you don't feel as frustrated or like, oh, I have to do this and I feel like this, because I'm going to feel like this at this point. So maybe schedule it differently. So I think that's a cool part that we can talk about, and actually setting up those 4 weeks of your, basically weeks of your cycle.
Yeah. And okay. I think that's important, because I do the same thing. I say the weeks, because when you're kind of looking at a 4-week month or whatever that looks like, that's important, because when you are shifting through your schedule, I plan out usually the first Sunday or the end, today of the month is the last day of this month. And I do plan through it and go, okay, what's happening next month? What do I have on the calendar that's already there maybe? But then I can look ahead even to the next month. And we've talked about tracking and actually, journaling in apps or however you want, tracking your cycle. And I can now pull up in my Pre-Mom app and go, oh, okay, around that time in that week is my period. I know how I'm going to be feeling. Do I want to plan a barbecue with 20 other families? No, I just do not. Right. So I can look at invitations from people. I can look at events. I can look at my business, commitments, and go, even if I am committed to something, my expectations might be a little different. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think like if we can walk through it in a way, and this is how it was just recently said to me, and I like this. So if this resonates with you, then great. But we talked a little bit more about it think of it being different seasons. So we're going to talk about the very first part of your cycle being the day that you start flowing enough that you have to wear a pad or a tampon or whatever it is that you use, or a cup or whatever. So that first 7 days from that point on, we consider that to be spring. So although the first maybe 2 or 3 days, you might have a little heavier flow, or you might feel a little more like I can't actually do a whole lot because I might leak, or I might just feel like a little uncomfortable. it doesn't mean that you actually mood wise are feeling that way. Like usually there's some relief from that week before in the mood as
Yes.
soon as the period kicks in, right? So that is actually a really good time to think of it as new beginning. So what does spring mean? For eating, it means like nice leafy greens, light things that make you feel fresh and, make your body feel like you're not heavy, which makes sense, right? Because that's when you're
Yeah.
kind of feeling like, ugh, everything's all around the pelvic area right then. So eating lighter. It also means like exercising in a way that's lighter at the beginning, right? So going for walks, doing some yoga. You might do strength training, but it would be like low weights, maybe higher reps, or a little bit of Pilates, like just lower
Mhm.
things. And then when it comes to like your life, that's when you're thinking like, I'm getting ready, right? It's spring,
Yeah.
I'm planting. So I'm doing things that I enjoy doing because I know 7 days from now, I'm going to be full in. I'm going to be creative. I'm going to be ready to do more. So starting to get that process in place, but obviously not having 20 people for a barbecue, right?
Well,
But
and I
maybe
think
thinking about
knowing
that for next
yourself.
week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I think
Yeah.
knowing yourself too. Like I know there's women who have no problem being sexually active during their period, and I'm like,
Right.
don't even come close. Like
Right.
you're lucky if I let you hug me, right? Like, so everyone has their own rhythm and their own kind of feelings. Some people are, I think being like you said about eating, I think that's a really great tip because those days leading up when we're having that shift of hormones before we're about to shed that lining and everything starts to shift, it is like winter. And I think that's a
Right.
great comparison is that feeling of like, oh, everything sucks. I
Yeah.
can't wait for spring, like all those feelings. That is
Yeah.
emotionally and kind of physically how your body is feeling. But we do tend to carb up a bit. We do tend to crave more, things that we maybe don't normally eat. But then as you head into the week or the 4 or 5 days of your period, having some of those fresher foods, the lighter things, I love that suggestion because I know for myself personally, I can kind of get into this like, oh, I just ate like crap for 3 days, or I ate, I had fast food
Right.
that I don't normally eat, or I had chips yesterday, whatever. I might as well just keep eating like that for the next few days because I feel blah. And yet,
Right.
if I do eat well, if I do pay attention to that and I do eat fresh things and I do have some of the lighter foods, I feel way better. Like it
Yeah.
has a dramatic impact on your period comfort as well.
Yeah.
Eliminating dairy during your period, if you eat it the rest of the time, going easy on your carbs during that week, whatever, can definitely have an impact on cramping. We've learned that and bloating and that sort of thing. So I think
Yeah.
that's great. Good suggestions. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the nice part is as that week is ending, we tend to feel pretty decent as, things are petering out. And so again, like we can start to think about doing, if you're somebody who works out or if you're somebody who goes for walks, you can go for longer walks or you can do something that's more rapid or that takes a little more energy. And same thing with like even your mind and mood, you tend to start being more focused and you're able to be more creative. And so into that second
Yeah.
week, it's summer, like you're full on in
Yeah.
that real week right after everything has slowed down. And I think that's a fun time if you really plan that. And I think that's funny because when you think of your journal or your calendar or whatever that you put down, like mine now has like I have a little star day, week one, as soon as it starts, and then a week later I immediately go in and put 2 and put 3 and put 4, and I might actually adjust a little bit of what I've
Mm.
put down in my agenda because I know now precisely what I'm going to probably be like as far as energy level and focus and creativity and all of that. So that second week when it's summertime, then it's like lots of variety of foods, right? Enjoying all the fresh different colors of food, light grains like quinoa or things that are, again, not heavy sitting in the belly, but just enjoying all the abundance, right, that we would
Mm.
have in summer. And at the same time, that's when we have the most energy. So if you have work stuff to plan, like if you have an important meeting, stick it in that week. Like you're the most focused, you're the most creative, you have the most energy. That's the week where if you have to burn the midnight oil,
Yeah.
you can stay up later, like you can handle it, right? Not that you should ever get less sleep, but you can, if you had to, you would
Special
put it in that
events or
week.
projects. Yeah.
Exactly. If you have something big, or if you want to have a party, or if you want to plan your, kid's big, birthday, if you have the choice between the weekend before or that weekend, aim for that weekend, right? Like there's just things that you can kind of switch around. And then as you head into the third phase, we're heading into fall. So again, we're still have good energy. We're still in pretty great shape. We're eating slightly more into the root vegetables. We're starting
Yeah.
to prep our body for winter, right? So a
Full of
little
comfort
bit
food.
heavier.
Yeah.
Yeah, but only a little bit, because we're still, fall is still harvest, right? So it's still all the good stuff, all the
Yeah.
bright colors and all of that stuff. If you're a meat eater, then it's your chicken and your fish and lighter proteins, things that are going to make you feel good. You're looking at that kind of thing. And then at the same time, you're starting to prep, like your brain is still focused, but your energy is starting to drop. And
Mhm.
so you want to start thinking about, okay, so what can I do this week that doesn't take a lot of creative energy? Like, are there things
Right.
I have to get done that's just rote, right? Like,
Yeah,
I have
good
to get
things
my
to wrap
taxes
up.
done.
Yes.
Yeah, I have to get my taxes done, or I have to finish off this project, or I need to do something that's just, mundane tasks that you don't have to think too much. So you're starting to get into that phase. And then, and exercise that week, you can still be, again, more energetic, but as that week's petering out, you might go to more like weight training, or again, you might go to things that are, again, not super high impact, or that end of things. And then you head into winter, right? It's our week before our period's going to start. That's when we want comfort things. And
Yeah.
so if we really nourish accordingly, because often women tell me they have huge cravings during that week,
Yeah.
but usually it's because we're feeding ourselves with dense enough food to feel really grounded and really sustained. And so then we're reaching for chips and chocolate and ice cream and all the garbage, because it's just like we're not full, and we are more hungry. We actually do need more calories during that week. So
Yeah.
you can have more, but choose things like stews and casseroles and one dish pot type things. If you're going to have a little more carbs, choose good carbs, but maybe you're going to have some brown rice, or maybe you're going to have something that's denser, right? Something that just kind of sticks. Things like
That's when
sweet
I want shepherd's
potato and
pie.
squash.
I want my
Yeah,
shepherd's pie.
exactly. Enjoy your
Potatoes
potatoes.
and meat and
Yeah,
veggies. I'm
yeah.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
And enjoy them, because it's way better eating those and eating things that are heavier and eating more of that than
Yeah.
reaching for all the garbage, right? So just
Yeah.
make your choices. You're about to go into a week of eating nice and light and fresh. So enjoy that time.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is the time where I would say you're in hibernation. Like, you're not out about, for most people, they're not out about wanting to be out socializing. You should be having more sleep. So
Mhm.
actually being, conscious of the fact that maybe a half hour earlier bedtime is a good idea, for a half hour or later wake up. Other things to consider are, okay, what do I need, to get my brain to function through this? Because your brain is at kind of just getting through. And so, like, you're not planning to do big meetings, then you're not planning things that are going to take a lot of energy, like thought energy or creativity, any of that. You're really, you're giving yourself time off almost in that space, and really doing things that are so simple, tasks that just need to be done because they need to be done, not because you have to, really drive to move things forward. And obviously things come up in life, and you can't
Yeah.
you can't always perfectly schedule,
Yeah.
but sometimes you can delay. Sometimes you can, do the minimal. And so this week, that's your minimal week. That's your week where you really
Right.
are resting, relaxing, self-care, right? Giving yourself the grace to say, it's okay if I want to have a half hour earlier bedtime. It's okay if I want to binge watch 3 shows this weekend. Like,
Yeah.
that's your time to do it.
Yeah.
And then you're going to go back into spring, so you can enjoy kind of that time period. And if you really watch in that week, what are the things that really stand out for you? Like, maybe you're a chocolate craver or whatever. It may mean that you need more magnesium, because chocolate has magnesium. And so if you start to watch, because we generally have certain things that are our go-tos, you can actually start thinking about, like, what is my body craving? So is there some mineral or vitamin that's prevalent in that thing that I
Yeah.
actually need to take care of myself during this week, and get some of that either in another food or in a supplement or whatever, that will help me make it through that week feeling better, and come out the other side not feeling like, oh, I just had a week of binging in every single way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that, because you can kind of do a little investigative, like, okay, what is actually in this that my body wants or that I am craving? How can I meet that in another way? Or maybe I still do want to indulge in that, but I can support my body in a more natural version, which is kind of what we're all about. So
Yeah.
now, it's something that I think is key in everything we talk about. The whole idea of it's what we never knew. And it's because it's what
Hmm.
our moms didn't know, our aunts didn't know it. Women of the past didn't know this. It's key to understand your cycle in this way as well, because this affects fertility. This affects how you plan conception. This affects, uh, your sexual moods as well, and your desire moods, and all those things change within your cycle. And if we do pay attention to that, I laughingly told my hubby, who the other day, I was like, listen, if you would just pay attention to the week I'm ovulating, like in that week, someone there, you can have it whenever you want. like, I'm here. And he's laughing, and I'm like, think about it. You all know when deer have mating season, when the bears have mating season. It's the same thing with us. We have a time in our cycle where we're definitely more interested in the opposite sex, if that's how it works for us, that we're created for that purpose, to get pregnant. That's the idea, is you are more fertile then. And if you're trying not to get pregnant, here's the downside. If there's a downside, that's usually that same time as well. But if you're going to use any, form of, I talked a bit about trying to avoid, hormonal contraception, but if you're going to use prophylaxis of any kind, that's your time to do that. And the rest of the time, you don't have to, right? In a committed relationship, you can enjoy whatever your relationship, looks like. But in that, 3 to 5 day window, when you have the potential to conceive, if you are trying to conceive, there's a reason we feel more energetic, more, lovey, more touchy, more interested, more all of those things. It's not just in the rest of our life. It is also in our sexual hormones and all of that too. So I think it's kind of cool because we never knew that. I know I was never taught that. I wasn't taught it in school. I don't know. I remember yours might be different because you're a little bit older, just a little bit older than me. But health class, high school, I will never forget. And thank goodness we actually had a female gym teacher. She was fantastic. Our first year we didn't. We had a man, and we never even touched sex ed. Our second year, grade 10 and 11, we did have a great woman who did our gym class. And I remember we learned about the male anatomy, female anatomy, very, very brief, and what a condom is. That's it. That's it in my entire high school career. Now I know they've changed this, and some of it I agree, some of it I don't agree, because they're the point. The point is, if we standing our cycles at a young age, young enough, right, when our cycles are becoming regular, and we can teach that, then we can avoid a lot of pitfalls. We can understand why, suddenly I'm attracted to every boy that looks my way at 16 the week I'm ovulating. And that I don't necessarily have to fulfill that urge every time. There are other ways for creative output for that time of energy, right? I just feel like we've done such an injustice. Generations, like I'm talking back to the times, right? Generations where we just had no clue why we felt the way we did at the times of the month that we did. And the only thing that seems to stay attached to this whole process is the stigma of, oh, well, you're just PMSing. That's the only thing that ever seems to be taught or passed down to boys and girls, any gender, of that's just that time of the month, or you're PMSing. It's negative. It's very derogatory in some ways. And I think we are really missing the respect of what our body talks to us about through each of these cycles. And I love stuff we've talked about today, because if we track it first, or even just spend some time tuning into our body through each step of the way. So even if you don't feel like using an app or tracking it or writing it down, I highly recommend it. Even if you don't do it for a couple of months to get a rhythm, that you can see. But even if you don't, if you just start at day 1 of your period and just tune in, take a minute every day and just be like, how am I feeling? How's my appetite? How's my mental health feeling? How's my mood, my emotions? How's my gut feel? Right? How much energy do I have? If you just kind of do that through each of those stages, then when your period ends, okay, now how am I feeling? It's that simple, right? But if we don't know, if nobody tells us, if we're not taught or have this explained until we're in our 30s, or until we're having a baby, or until surprise, you're 18 and pregnant and didn't know how it happened, the fact that you didn't know that there was one tiny little window that's possible, to me, it just kind of blows my mind that we're not teaching this, right?
Yeah. Well, and I have an 18-year-old daughter who, was in school until the end of grade 10 and doesn't know any of this still. So it's not, that much different. And the is, like, for me, and I think this all the time now, I know her cycle she knows her cycle because she doesn't track, and I track her. And partially because I want to make sure if anything's off, we know. Like how is she going to know what to say to a doctor or to naturopath or anybody if she doesn't even have a clue whether this is normal or not? So I think that's an important reason to track. But the other reason is there are times of the month where I know I need to have a conversation with her. This is not the week to do it, right? Or I know that she really needs to be encouraged in this area. And if I wait until next week, she's more likely to actually move forward with the advice, right? So there's just things,
Yeah.
again, that it just makes sense to know some of that, even for your own kids, um, because it just gives you a better relationship. You're not butting heads as often, and the reception of that communication is much better, right? They receive it
Mhm.
better. If she's more in a mood to be very, go getter kind of that week of her month, then that's the week I'm going to say to her, hey, maybe you should do some extra schoolwork, this week, and really get on top of that topic. And she's going to be like, yeah, that's a great idea. She's going to bang it out because I put it into the right time for her, that she naturally would be wanting to have that. And she just needed a little encouragement. So I think those kinds of things, like we just knew nothing. Like we knew that at a point in the month we bled and that we could get pregnant because we had a period. Like that was
Yeah,
basically it. We have a
that's
period,
it.
we can get pregnant.
I
No
don't even
idea when.
remember knowing that. Like,
Yeah.
nobody even told me that. That's why you have a period, right? Like,
Mm,
it's just so amazing the things that as you progress through life, you go, I think, and part of it is, in fairness, is as women, we sort of just assume. You assume
hmm.
you're going to figure this out because we were all left to figure it out. When the reality
Right.
is, we need to have more conversations like this. We need to be sharing, podcasts with our girls and sharing these conversations with them. When they ask their questions, answer them, right? Even our little guys.
Yeah.
I mean, my boys, even just having age appropriate conversations. And we've talked about that, but so that this isn't a taboo thing. This isn't and I don't understand. It's stick with the stigma of what we've carried on. So I love that
Right.
we're having these conversations. I hope we keep having these conversations. And the more we can understand fertility, reproduction, our cycles, all of those things, it serves so many purposes. So I just encourage every parent, right? It doesn't even have to be left up to mom. I mean, dads too, partners, whatever, being able to have a respectful conversation around, you know, my kids know very well that when I have my period, usually for the first day or two, I'm very tired. I get low iron, I get very tired. So I try to take care of that nutritionally, but they know that I'm going to have a nap. Like, I never lay
Hmm.
down, right? I'm just not a napper. But my hubby will be like, hey, I'm going to take him out today. Like, I'll say it's just that day. I need some quiet time. I need to be by myself for a little bit. They know, and he'll be like, yep, let's go, no problem, I'll take them, let's go to the park, whatever. So when you have those open conversations with your family or your partners or whoever you're living with and making life with, there's a better understanding, which then brings respect, I think, to the situation. It's at the end of the day, it's how it's all handled, I think, and how we share the information that's important, and clue our partners in, right? Clue them into your
Yeah.
cycle. you know Share your app with them, or let them understand and explain some of these things and these shifts that happen in your body. So it's just a conversation. It's just a normal thing that is discussed and is understood between your family and or your partner or whatever. So when it comes to planning pregnancy, this is all important. This is all a really key thing when we're looking at, again, our cycles, our energy levels, planning time to be together for conception. Maybe it's a getaway. Maybe it's having some kid free time if you do have kids already. Making sure you have some time planned in and knowing that window of opportunity is really important. It's I think one of the things that we think is just going to work, right? It's
Yeah.
just going to happen. We're no problem. I know so many families and couples who get excited about starting a family, and then 6 months in, they're like, nothing's happening. I'm timing intercourse, but nothing's happening. Well, are you timing it for an entire week? Are you giving yourself a whole week's window around the time of ovulation because you need that full week? Oh, well, no. I had a work trip and then I had this and we're at a time zone change. And all of these things affect your ovulation. They all affect fertility. So when, like you're saying, when we can understand each season of our cycle clearly and have a good understanding of what it looks like personally, because they're all different, then when you're planning conception or not, avoiding conception, either way, But if you're planning conception, it does take the guesswork out of it. And I think couples would have a lot more success, again, if this understanding was there ahead of time. So share this with people, share this episode out. I think it's important, that we get this message continuing to flow and to be spread. So please share this out and stick with us, because we are going to be heading into pregnancy. We're moving into, you managed to figure out your cycle. You managed to hit it on the nose. That swimmer made it where it needed to go. And you got that positive test. Now what? So I'm looking forward to our next conversations. We're going to be talking a bit about finding out you're pregnant, first trimester kind of fun stuff like that. So we'll talk soon, and we'll be back with more What Your Mama Didn't Tell You. Would you like to learn more? Find me on Instagram and YouTube at MomDaze Podcast.